This meeting being recorded pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, General Laws 38, Chapter 18, and the Governor's March 15, 2020 order imposing strict limitation on the number of people that may gather in one place. This meeting of the North Adams City Council is being conducted via remote participation. No in-person attendance of members of the public is permitted. This meeting can be viewed live on Northern Berkshire Community Television and will be posted to their website as soon as possible. Madam Clerk, would you call the roll, please?
Blackmer?
Yes.
Bona? Bona?
You're hard to hear, Debbie.
Bona?
Harpin? Hopkins?
Here.
LaForest? Lamb?
Here.
Moulton?
Here.
Sweeney? Here. Wilkinson? Wilkinson?
He's here.
Okay,
You have a quorum.
Thank you. Before we proceed, was there a short list of names for remembrance tonight?
Yes.
They're in my book. Thank you. I will ask you not to stand for a moment of silence, but we will take a moment to remember Louis Zeider, Chairman and member of the North Adams Recreation Commission and the Mayor's Blue Ribbon Commission, John Carrier, an assistant teacher at Johnson School, Dan Vareski, member of the administrative staff at the North Adams Middle School, and Mary Ellen Perrault, special education and elementary school teacher. Thank you. I'm going to turn my camera so that we can see the American flag, and we'll recite the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you again. These are unusual circumstances, and I thank you all for your patience. I know we're starting a few minutes late. As it is with these things, there were a couple of technical difficulties, but I think we have ironed them out. Before we begin, I'd like to ask for a motion to suspend Council Rules 10 and 11, which provide for hearing of visitors and open forum. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Please raise your hand. We have a motion from Blackmer, Councilor Blackmer, a second from Councilor Moulton. All those in favor, please raise your hands or say aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much. Approval of the minutes of March 24th, 2020. Do we have a motion to approve? Please indicate so by raising your hand, Councilor Lamb, and a second from Councilor Blackmer. Thank you. All those in favor of approval of the minutes?
Aye.
Thank you. Mayor's communication number 20, requesting time to provide an update on the COVID-19 pandemic response. Without objection, we'll file the communication and hand the floor over to Mayor Bernard. Mayor.
Thank you. First and foremost, a mic check. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Terrific. Thank you. Thank you for this time. I think the council president said it. It's an unusual situation. It's a rapidly changing situation. I want to offer a few brief updates and then leave some time for questions. I don't know what the protocol is, if people want to leave them in chat for the president to take, or just do a hand raise. I'm happy to entertain however you prefer. I want to start by just saying, as I did in the last update, that the city staff continue to perform with dedication and resilience in challenging circumstances, and the community should be deservedly proud of them. That's especially true of our first responders who are at the front lines at a time of great risk and uncertainty, and it absolutely extends to the team at the COVID-19 Operations Center for Northern Berkshire. Equally important is the work of our community-based organizations. The number of people reaching out to provide help and support is unbelievable, but so have been the needs. Conversations around support for youth, food security, safety, especially as it concerns the victims and survivors of domestic and sexual assault, and then the overall economic impact of this pandemic. The claims for the period from March 15th to April 4th was close to 500,000 unemployment filings here in Massachusetts, with more than 50,000 of those coming from retail and food industries. Certainly something in our area where we've seen the impact of rooms and occupancy tax in our tourist economy. That's something that we all need to continue to be concerned about. I want to go really quickly through some data. I would say to everyone that the daily update from the Department of Public Health is the best source of information, although even DPH notes that there's day-to-day variability in the case reports because they're getting it from different sources and different labs. So as of today in Massachusetts, there are 28,163 COVID-19 cases, confirmed cases in Massachusetts. That's an increase of 1,296 from yesterday. And when I spoke to you on March 24th, there were 1,159 cases in Massachusetts. There were 957 deaths in Massachusetts, again, an increase of 113 from yesterday. And at this time, the last time I spoke, it was 11 deaths. Berkshire County, 365 cases, an increase of 5 versus 73 on the 24th. 22 deaths, an increase of 1 today. When we spoke back in March, there was only 1 Berkshire County death from COVID-19 at that point. And in North Adams today, we had an increase of 1 case to 29. There were 4, and we did experience one COVID-19 related death in the city. But we also have to understand and acknowledge, as the comments that the council president made, that the situation at Williamstown Commons and in other parts of the healthcare system means that there are North Adams residents who have passed in other places, and they're not represented in the North Adams statistic, but they are our residents, they are our friends, our family, and our neighbors and our community members. And I think we need to remember and acknowledge that. We continue to operate under a state of emergency as we have since the governor declared it on March 10th, and I did a local state of emergency on March 13th. We operate under the advisory from DPH to stay at home, the prohibition of gatherings of 10 or more people, the extension of non-essential business closures and school closures through May 4th. Last week, DPH issued an emergency order regarding grocery store operations and occupancy limits, putting that at 40% of the maximum posted occupancy for those stores. It's also, we were early, this was included in the order, but we were early in North Adams and in other places to having senior only hours at our grocery stores. And then on Friday, DPH issued an advisory regarding face coverings and cloth masks. And I'll say a little bit more about that at the end of these remarks. With regard to the schools, again, we will be closed at least until May 4th. And the discussions have started with the superintendent locally and with superintendents regionally about what a further extension of that closure would mean, either by a state order or by a local action if we made that determination. The district's remote learning program began on April 6th with a focus on instruction, but our school adjustment counselors continue to be in the field reaching out to students and checking in with them at what is an incredibly challenging time. To date, to support remote learning, we've put 173 Chromebooks in students' hands with more distributions planned. We continue to provide daily meals at 5 sites: Brayton, Colegrove Elementary Schools, Greylock Valley and Mohawk Forest Apartments, and Uno Park. All children in North Adams under the age of 18 are eligible regardless of enrollment status. In 4 weeks, we've provided nearly 15,000 meals. That's 8,000 lunches, about 7,800 breakfasts, about 800 meals per day, including meals over the weekends on Fridays. And then last week, McCann started providing a daily dinner service as well. And they're providing dinner and then a cold breakfast as well. So we are meeting the food security needs of our students as best as possible. On April 3rd, the governor signed into law an act to address challenges faced by municipalities and state authorities resulting from COVID-19. Our local delegation, Representative Barrett, Senator Hines, were in the forefront of supporting that legislation and the emergency measurements. One of the key things in that bill was some relief for taxpayers, some temporary relief for taxpayers. We certainly continue to encourage the timely payment of bills, but we know that many residents face challenges as a result of COVID-19. And so we've extended the due dates on real estate and personal property bills, motor vehicle excise, and water and sewer to June 1st. This is applicable regardless of the due date on the bills received. We're waiving interest and payments and penalties on late payments from March 10th through June 30th for any bills. And those were discretionary actions by state order by this legislation. We are suspending the termination of essential services for non-payment after March 10th through June 30th if the non-payment resulted from a demonstrated inability to pay due to COVID-19. The other provision in that bill allowed restaurants to sell alcoholic beverages on premise as part of their takeout and delivery service. The key issue, and the one that we're going to be working with most critically over the coming weeks and working with the council and the finance committee, is the budget. There's a great deal of uncertainty at every level about the timing of the economic recovery, about the risk of moving into recovery too quickly. The experts are warning that a second wave could be as damaging and as disruptive, if not more so, than the first wave. And then the fact that even past the surge, we all remain vulnerable until a vaccine or other cure or intervention is developed. The state held a budget hearing today, and I'm going to just quote a couple of things from State House News because I think they're relevant. This was the lead in one of the stories on State House News. Amid universally dire estimates of the toll the coronavirus pandemic is taking, economists and legislators agreed Tuesday that the state's financial prognosis is still largely unknowable at this point in the crisis, and that public health considerations, not economic forces, will determine how the next few months will unfold. So we know that we're going to expect a significant drop in tax collections at the state level, and as we talked about the impact of layoffs. So we are back to the drawing board on our budget. We're anticipating that we may see that the January numbers from the governor do not hold, and we are modeling a number of options. And we're not ready to come in with a draft budget at this point, but a high-level update we should be able to get to very soon. Councillor Harpen and I have had a couple conversations about that, and we'll continue to find the right time to get in front of the committee so that we're giving you good information, but also understanding that there's going to be some unknowns in all of this. Two last points. One, a number of places to go for good information. If you're concerned about symptoms, you can visit Buoy Health. That's BUOY health.com. They have an online symptom checker. If you need support locally, 413-662-3614 or nbcovid@gmail.com for our local operations center liaisons. If you're looking for updates, text COVID-MA to 888-777. The DPH and mass.gov are sources of everything that's coming out from the administration. And for anyone interested or needing, I should say, unemployment information, the best resource is uionline.detma.org, or the mass.gov website and the Department of Unemployment Assistance, which also includes CARES Act benefit information. You can follow North Adams City Hall or my pages on social media. Those are updated fairly regularly on news and information. And then lastly, before I open it up to questions, the message is really clear. This is not the time to take our foot off the gas. The state models predict the COVID-19 surge between April 10th and 20th, and it's looking like the latest data says that's going to be on the later side of that. That's why the physical distancing continues to be crucial. I think the governor has said it as clearly as anyone. The best way to fight COVID-19 is not to spread it to others. So please see the details of the public health advisory from the Department of Public Health. Only leave home for essential errands, maintain 6-foot distancing. If you're in a place where you can't do that, follow the CDC and DPH recommendations on wearing a cloth face covering in a public setting, stay home if you don't feel well, wash your hands regularly, go outside for fresh air if you can maintain social distancing, and use remote modes of communication to connect with family and friends, and particularly check in regularly with those relatives and neighbors who may be feeling especially vulnerable at this time. And so with that, I will yield to any questions the council has.
Questions from the council? Signify by raising your hand. Councilor Moulton.
Yes, through the chair to the mayor, has the city cut back on any employees or are we still at full staff?
We have not made any staffing cuts at this time.
Thank you.
Other questions from councilors? I'll give you a second since a few of you look like you're frozen. Councilor Blackmer.
With the taxes, are you getting any indication or people calling and saying they can't pay their taxes, they've lost their job? Has it been a lot of it, or is it more anecdotal? Unmute. Mayor, you're muted.
Yep, I caught it. Yep, it's anecdotal and anticipatory, so we want to make sure that relief is in place should people need it. Again, the numbers are incredibly concerning when you see the filings, at the state and national levels, and we want to be respectful of that.
Right. Okay.
Thank you. Other questions from councilors? Seeing Councilor Harpen.
Yeah, I just have one. It sounds like we're going to delay some payments until June, but if this carries over even further, or even if it, goes through June, will we postpone future payments as well? Or is it?
So the legislation only gives us the ability to do that through the end of the year.
Okay, so it could happen at the end of the year.
So through the end of the fiscal year, to clarify, it would take another piece of legislation to provide that into the next fiscal year.
All right. Did I say hand up, Councilor Blackmer?
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify that that's all set by law, not by option, other than the fact that they gave us the local option to do this, but only through the 30th. The other question I had is, have we even started thinking about a 1/12 budget yet?
We have, we're looking, that's one of the things that we're looking at. The concern being, in the early going, that gives us some benefit, but there are certain things in the first part of the year that we're not spending anyway. So it would be a little bit artificial to start a 1/12 budget, knowing that there are some expenses that hit later in the year. And so that impact gets magnified further down.
Right. And I also know that the MMA's my attitude is I'd rather have a predictable state aid that's less than we would like, but I don't want to get hit with 9 C cuts in December. That's just, it's draconian almost. I was there and I'm looking at the council going, Bob Moulton's been on a few, and I don't know if he was on, I don't think he was on when that was going on. Councilor Bona came in, was elected in 2009. Very few of us have any experience with these huge budget cuts that have come, that are potential to come in. That we haven't seen it in most of our terms. I've seen it, but it's pretty limited.
Thank you, Councilor Harpen.
I just want to mention a few things because I think a lot of people watching might not be understanding the language that we're using. We use a lot of acronyms and in terms that people might not understand. So when you say fiscal budget, year-end fiscal budget, that means June 30th. So that would be we can delay payments until June 30th, not till the end of the year. The fiscal year actually ends June 30th. So right. I just wanted to make that clear.
Right. Thank you.
And the other question or the other issue that I have is Councilor Blackmer had mentioned some, did you say a J2 budget? If possibly someone can explain that so the layman can understand it, please. Thank you.
Who has a definition of a J2 budget?
I didn't say J2, I said 1/12. It's 1/12. Basically, if your budget isn't approved by the year end, you have to get approval from the state to go forward. What's called a 1/12 budget. You basically, if your budget's 48 million, you can spend 4 million a month.
Right.
But you have to get approval. That's how it works. I think these are more conversations for the finance committee. I was just asking a few general things.
Right.
I think the
Yeah.
detail and getting in the weeds is not really what we need to do here.
We have questions from Councilor Moulton and then Councilor Bona.
Oh, I'm good.
Okay, great. Councilor Bona, did I see a hand go up? Well, I thought I was doing better than in our usual meetings, being able to watch for hands. Did I see a hand from Councilor Wilkinson? Okay, I'm seeing things. Does anybody remember the great show Get Smart? Tone of
Loved
silence. Clearly, the technology is not 100% tonight, and I'll look at other ways to do our next meeting. Mayor, did you have anything to add before we move on?
I just want to mention that Councilor Harpen has her hand up.
Well, thank you. That's the one I missed. I apologize. Councilor Harpen.
Thank you, Mayor. No, I just want to make sure, absolutely, this has to be something that is addressed in the Finance Committee, and we certainly will do that. I've spoken to the mayor. I just want to make sure that the people that are watching understand the process and possibly some delays and things that could be happening down the line that aren't part of our normal process and could be delayed, and how it's actually going to affect them. So currently, right now, how it's going to affect them is there could be delays or postponements in your tax or any payments made to the city until the end of June. So I just wanted to make that clear.
All right, thank you very much. Mayor, thank you.
Thank you.
I'm sure you'll stay with us for a few minutes. I think. Moving on, paper 11,859, communication submitted by Councilor Lamb addressing various safety issues regarding sidewalk ordinances, last in City Council February 20th and postponed to tonight, and to refer to the Public Safety Committee. I understand Public Safety has not been able to meet on this. What's your pleasure, Councilor Lamb?
So just for the, in respect to knowing that, you know, we're in budget season now, it is a interesting, challenging time to get any meetings, and also understanding that Councilor LaForest, day permanent full-time job is obviously all-encompassing right now. Just for the sake of putting it on another date, I'm just going to put this out to the second meeting of, the first meeting of July, so that it's put out there, so that hopefully we can get at least one community or public safety meeting together prior to then, but not trying to push it too aggressively at this juncture.
Okay, we have a meeting to postpone this issue until the first meeting in July. Is there a second? Councilor Blackmer, any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by raising your hand. Aye. Thank you all. Paper 11,862, communication from Councilor Bona regarding the North Adams Youth Commission. Last in City Council, March 10th, voted to refer to the mayor's office and to postpone to tonight's meeting. Mayor, I know you've been tied up with an awful lot of other things, so I'm going to assume that it would make the most sense to postpone this to a future meeting. Councilor Bona?
Motion to postpone till second meeting of May.
We have a motion to postpone to the second meeting of May. Is there a second? Second from Councilor Blackmer. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by raising your hand. It's 8-0. Thank you. Paper 11,866, communication submitted by the Department of Conservation and Recreation regarding acquisition of land in the city of North Adams, last in council March 24th. voted to postpone to tonight's meeting. Motion to approve for discussion.
So moved.
Second.
Councilor Blackmer moves, Councilor Lamb seconds. You all had a memo that I asked for from the original person communicating this to us. It just laid it out in pretty clear terms, and I wish that had been provided to us at the first meeting, because it's pretty clear to me. It's just a land sale from the landowner J.W. Kelly of Hancock. It would add to the land already owned by the or managed by the DCR. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, I think just a voice vote signify by raising your hand. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
And it is unanimous. Thank you very much. Council Paper 11,868, communication submitted by Councilor Lamb requesting time for a presentation by Zach Fury, Office of Community Development, regarding property disposition plan and the urban renewal plan. Without objection, we'll file the communication. Mr. Fury is in the back room. I think he's going to be joining us by audio. You have all had a copy of the presentation provided to you. We had hoped to actually get it on this Zoom meeting. I don't think that's going to be possible, but obviously the presentation itself is part of the public record and can certainly be viewed or requested by anyone. Zach, are you on the line?
Yes.
Excellent. Let me just also say, for the purposes of the presentation on the urban renewal plan, it was suggested to me, since I am a former member of the Redevelopment Authority, that I get a ruling on this from the Ethics Commission, which I did. I filed the disclosure of appearance of conflict of interest form under General Laws 268A, paragraph 23B3, which just outlines the fact that I had been a member of the Redevelopment Authority, but that it is possible for me to perform my official duties objectively and fairly. I discussed this with an attorney of the day at the Ethics Commission, and the attorney agreed with me that there was no obvious conflict of interest and just recommended that I file that form, which I have done with the city clerk. Councilor Lamb, since this is your communication, what would you like to see?
Thank you. I just wanted to give a little bit of context here. Several folks on the council joined for our community development meeting that we had last week. This is essentially the same presentation that Zach gave us at that meeting. Ultimately, you know, in an ideal world, we would be having this presentation in person right now, or we would be waiting until we could have this meeting in person. But there is some very challenging and hard, fast timelines that come along with some of what we're going to hear tonight. So really the ultimate objective of having Zach present this is for the council to essentially recommend that either they continue work as an office on each of these individual pieces or not. So this is really an attempt from the Office of Community Development to not misuse time of the department for efforts that essentially may not be at the pleasure of the council in the long term. So this is very much so meant to be informational, but also to give them a true sense from the council as to if we feel that it is appropriate for them to continue moving forward on both of these efforts. So we'll try to make a recommendation after each of these just to their office, not necessarily in an official sense, but to at least give them sort of the thumbs up to continue moving forward. Especially, I think Zach will mention some of the timelines on one of these in particular that are very tight timelines and not something that we have flexibility in. So they either need to do it or not do it. And that's going to be sort of the end of that conversation. So I just wanted to give context before Zach goes in and explain as to why we're actually having a true presentation this evening.
All right, terrific. And again, just to be clear that there are two sections to this, and it would be useful to have a recommendation on each one, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Mr. Fury, the floor is yours.
All right. Thank you, Councilor Lamb and Council President Hopkins, and thank you to the City Council for allowing the Office of Community Development the time to speak with you tonight. Sorry. When the Community Development Committee met on February 3rd, the Office of Community Development delivered a broad strokes presentation of projects and initiatives for the fiscal year, this and the next fiscal year. I'd now like to use our time tonight to discuss two of those items in further detail. Those items are planning for the disposition of city-owned property and the Western Gateway Urban Heritage State Park Urban Renewal Plan. So hopefully you've all been provided with a printout or a PDF of the presentation. And so if you turn to slide 2 or page 2, we'll begin the night with planning for the disposition of city-owned property. The agenda for tonight includes a presentation of facts related to city-owned properties, the variables for consideration when planning for disposition, the methodology to be used, therefore, next steps regarding disposition planning, and time for council discussion. So turning the page to page 3, to begin, each blue marker on the map on page 3 represents a city-owned property. And a search of the assessor's database shows that the city of North Adams owns approximately 200 parcels throughout the city. These properties, however, are varied in many ways. Turning to slide 4, some city-owned properties serve essential municipal functions such as City Hall, the Department of Public Works facility, public safety building, and obviously the schools. Some properties serve non-essential municipal functions like Heritage State Park in Windsor Mill, in that they have the ability to generate revenue to the city through the leasing of property, but are not necessary to the carrying out of essential services and operations. On the other hand, other properties serve no municipal functions. Functionless properties include vacant parcels, commercial and industrial properties, and residential properties. Turning to slide 5, it should be noted that functionless or surplus properties generate no revenue to the city. They create significant costs in the form of insurance and maintenance, among others, and are at risk of falling into disrepair. As such, it is in the interest of the city to move to A, develop a strategic plan for the disposition of functionless properties that accounts for the associated variables and tools, and more on these in a few minutes. And B, to declare functionless properties surplus, and C, make such properties available for disposition via the appropriate vehicle. And again, more on this in a few pages. Turning to slide 6, in order to develop such a strategic plan for disposition as previously mentioned, certain variables must be analyzed and understood for each property so as to be able to effectively categorize each city-owned parcel of land. So for instance, such variables include the zoning district in which the parcel is situated and the uses allowed by the zoning district, as well as the dimensional requirements thereof. Topography also factors in, as slope goes a long way to determining a parcel's buildability. Another variable for consideration is community needs within neighborhood. For example, is additional housing a need, residential parking, commerce, and other needs. Another variable is the highest and best future land uses. These are often determined by zoning, topography, and community needs. And lastly, the means by which the parcel was acquired. The means of acquisition often determines how the city can sell a property. Turning to page 7. Over the years, the city's acquired property by various means, including through the tax title process, by gift or donation, and by purchase. How a property was acquired factors into and sometimes determines the disposition approach. Turning to slide 8, there are 3 ways by which the city can dispose of or sell property: by public auction, abutter sales, and by request for proposals or RFPs. Public auction should be the disposition approach of choice for properties acquired through the tax title process that are lots that conform to dimensional requirements and are also parcels of lesser strategic interest. Whereas a butter sale should be held for parcels that are non-conforming and therefore unbuildable lots and that are of no strategic interest to the city. Alternatively, requests for proposals should be used for those parcels that were acquired via means other than the tax title process that are conforming lots and that are of considerable strategic interest to the city. Turning to slide 9. Just to note further information regarding these disposition approaches. Public auctions are organized sales of multiple properties. Only properties acquired via the tax title process are eligible for disposition by public auction. Public auctions are open to the public, they require no council action, and are expeditious. Abutter sales are similar to public auctions, organized sales of properties. The differences being, in order for a property to be disposed of by an abutter sale, it must first be declared surplus property by the city council. And abutter sales are limited to abutting landowners. Lastly, RFPs should be the disposition RFPs are the disposition approach that allows the city the greatest control over the sale, as council declaration that the property is surplus is required, and the city may attach certain terms and restrictions on the sale, such as specifying a preferred use or uses. RFPs are advertised and open to the public. And the following slides, have provided a few examples of how city-owned properties can be categorized by disposition approach. So if you turn to slide 10, the property shown on this slide is a vacant lot that was acquired by the city via the tax title process. It is situated in the R5 or high density residential zoning district, in which the allowed uses are primarily, but not exclusively, residential. Cross-referencing the parcel's dimensions with the R5 dimensional requirements shows that the parcel constitutes a conforming lot on which 1 or 2 dwelling units could be constructed. Identified community needs in this neighborhood include residential parking. And while the slope in the rear of the parcel is somewhat limited, the highest and best use of the property would be as a single or 2-family home or for additional residential parking. For the aforesaid reasons, the optimum disposition approach for this property would be a public auction. Turning to slide 11, the property shown on this slide is situated in the R5, again, in the R5 zoning district or high density residential. It is a non-conforming lot as it does not meet the requirement for minimum lot area. There are currently no identified community needs in its neighborhood. As such, the highest and best use of the parcel would be for lot expansion by an abutting property owner, which makes this property eligible for an abutter sale should it be declared surplus by the city council. Now, turning to slide 12, here we have an example of properties that are fit for disposition by RFP. And please bear with me here, as this is a somewhat complex example. And these are properties that should be thoughtfully and carefully disposed of RFP, and we'll get into that momentarily. So the 9 properties shown on this slide were acquired by the city through various means. Some were acquired via the tax title process, others by gift or donation. Those parcels with frontage, the parcels shown with frontage on Bracewell Avenue are situated in the R5 zoning district, while those fronting River Street are in the B2 or local business zoning district, in which commercial uses are allowed and there is no maximum requirement for dwelling units. Cross-referencing the dimension. I apologize for that. Cross-referencing the dimensions of these parcels with the dimensional requirements of the zoning districts shows that individually 8 of the 9 parcels shown do not meet the minimum lot area and are therefore non-conforming. It should also be noted that the majority of these parcels have been vacant for more than a year without a building permit having been pulled or construction begun thereon. However, adjacent parcels under common ownership can be combined to create a building lot, meaning that those parcels that abut one another can become conforming lots. Identified community needs in the area may include residential parking, outdoor recreation, and additional housing stock. As such, the highest and best use of the properties would be for infill housing, residential parking, or some combination thereof. Because these properties are located in a residential neighborhood in close proximity to the downtown with certain needs require merging to be conforming and were acquired through various means, not all of which were through the tax title process, the preferred vehicle for disposition is by RFP. It should be noted, however, that in instances in which multiple city-owned properties to be made available for disposition are located in one neighborhood, the city will conduct a neighborhood meeting to gain input from residents prior to issuing an RFP. Turning to slide 13, functionless city-owned properties are a burden to the city. Not only do they not serve an essential function, nor do they generate revenue, they also create costs to the city. As such, it is important that the city develop a strategic plan to return such parcels to their highest and best use. This presentation is intended to demonstrate how the city intends to do just that. As such, next steps regarding disposition of city-owned property are to finalize disposition determinations, communicate such determinations in the form of a strategic prioritized plan, and work with the city council and other pertinent boards and commissions, as well as residents in the form of community meetings to implement the plan. With that said, Council President Hopkins, I'd like to turn it over to you to moderate any discussion that may arise.
Very good. Thank you very much. Before we do that, Mayor, are you still with us?
I'm still here.
Oh, there you are. Sorry, you moved position on the screen somehow. Did you want to offer
like
some
that.
acknowledgement before we move to questions?
Yeah, I think it's just worth acknowledging the work of the staff in community development. You mean you're hearing it from Zach. Certainly, Councilor Lamb has worked with Zach closely on this and all of community development. A real deep level of engagement, of thought, of digging into the regulations and coming together with a plan and some good recommendations on how to move forward on some of these things. And we'll see that more in the other section as well. But while we're kind of taking a pause here to talk about this segment of the discussion, I just want to make sure that it doesn't go uncommented that this team is doing really incredible, thoughtful work on community and economic development. Thank you.
And thank you. Before we move to discussion, just Councilor Lamb, did you want to actually put a motion on the table? You're muted still.
Darn technology. Yeah, I don't think we need to make a motion until after discussion has been had, questions are answered, and then we can go from there.
All right, very good. Questions from councilors for Mr. Fury. Councilor Wilkinson. I'm sorry, we're not hearing you, Councilor. Can you, let's see, you have had earbuds in.
He could also write it into the chat if necessary.
It looks like you are still muted, Councilor Wilkinson. Okay, can you text your question to me? Okay, other questions from councilors. As I say, the technology is not 100% here yet, apparently. Councilor Harpen.
Yeah, I did take a look at the PowerPoint, and actually I went to the meeting as well. So I just want to thank Zach for all his work on this. It was a really good presentation. So thank you, Zach. My question is, though, I did hear him say a few things that really kind of involve the community, like butter sales, public auctions, neighborhood meetings, and things that are going to bring people together. So my question is, in a time that we're in, unfortunately, right now, due to the pandemic and really us not necessarily warranted to be in close proximity, What is the time frame for this?
So this clearly, and obviously, no substantial community engagement would be conducted until such time as the emergency declaration is rescinded by the governor, and public life returns to some semblance of normalcy. In the meantime, we have a lot of work to do in developing this plan that involves a lot of data analysis and in the office at the computer type work. So our plan is to move forward with that and be ready for such time as when community engagement is possible.
Thank you. Other questions from councilors? Did I see another hand? Councilor Wilkinson, try again.
One more time. Can you hear me now? It doesn't like the earbuds. Just curious to the mayor, how many properties do we presently have in tax title?
Several hundred. I don't have the exact number off the top of my head.
But it's fair to say there's a lot of them.
Significant number.
Thank you.
Thanks. Other questions from councilors? Seeing none. Mr. Fury, if you'd like to continue with the second part of your presentation.
Council President.
I'm sorry, Councilor Lamb.
Just in light that there's not any further questions, I would just ask for a motion to suggest continued work on the disposition of property.
All right. Is that in the form of a motion?
That is a motion. Yes.
All right. We have a motion from Councilor Lamb, second from Councilor Blackmer. Other discussion before we take that vote? If you'd all signify aye. Councilor Bona.
Yeah, can you repeat that? I apologize. I'm having audio difficulties here, so the volume is very low.
Okay. Councilor Lamb, would you repeat your motion?
Sure. The motion is for the Office of Community Development to continue their work on their disposition of property planning.
So this is in essence the city council saying continue your work.
Yes.
That we endorse that. Okay, great. We have a motion and a second and a picture of Ben Lamb on, oh, I'm sorry. No, things are moving around again. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. Aye.
Aye.
And we have 8 ayes. There are none opposed. Thank you very much. Mr. Fury, if you would continue with the second part of your presentation.
All right, thank you, councilors. Moving on to the second item on the agenda, the urban renewal plan for the Western Gateway Urban Heritage State Park. We'll briefly present general information about urban renewal, as well as facts related to the Heritage State Park Urban Renewal Plan and a proposal to amend the urban renewal plan before opening the meeting to discussion. So turning to slide 16, or page 16, however you have it organized. Printed out. I'd like to begin by noting that urban renewal is not a philosophy, but rather a tool municipalities can use to enhance and or expedite redevelopment in targeted areas. It is, however, a tool that has historically been misused in numerous cities, including North Adams. So what we're talking about tonight is not eminent domain. It is not demolition and relocation, but something much simpler. So to begin, the question is, what is urban renewal? Urban renewal is established by Chapter 121 of Massachusetts General Laws to enable municipalities to revitalize decadent, substandard, or blighted areas, stimulate job creation and retention, provide for low and moderate income housing, enhance private investments, all of which create public benefits. The core principle or central tenet of urban renewal is its but-for clause, that redevelopment of blighted areas cannot happen without public sector participation. Lastly, urban renewal requires an urban renewal plan that is approved by the Commonwealth's Department of Housing and Community Development. Moving to slide 17, urban renewal plans are required to address certain items, including the area's eligibility, which requires an argument and proof that the proposed urban renewal area meets Chapter 121B's definition of decadent, substandard, or blighted. urban renewal plans or URPs are also required to include a section on objectives, which are the goals or objectives to be achieved by the plan. Another element for inclusion is acquisitions, identification of properties within the area to be acquired. URPs also must include a section on relocation, which is a plan illustrating how residents and businesses will be relocated, if any are to be relocated. Another element is disposition, descriptions of the properties to be sold by the public sector. Another section is redeveloper's obligation, a description of what is required of the private sector for the redevelopment of the proposed urban renewal area. Another element for inclusion is the time frame or the duration of the urban renewal plan and how objectives will be met during that time frame. URPs are also required to include a financial plan, a detailed plan for financing the implementation of the urban renewal plan. They must also demonstrate citizen participation by evidence that the public participated in the plan development process. And lastly, the last required element are municipal approvals. Municipal approvals are evidence that the plan went through the required public process, which includes approval by the local redevelopment authority, a planning board determination that the plan is consistent with the city's comprehensive plan, and approval by the city council. So as you can see, urban renewal plans are very complex documents that require an extensive amount of research, community engagement, and visioning. So moving to slide 18. There are, however, benefits to the efforts that go into creating an urban renewal plan. Namely, a URP allows municipalities greater flexibility in redeveloping target areas. They exempt local redevelopment authorities from Chapter 30B procurement law. Urban renewal plans communicate a community's vision, its goals, and its objectives for redevelopment, and strengthens and enhances the public sector's competitiveness in terms of grant funding. So turning to slide 19, in order to capture the aforesaid benefits, in 1981, the city created the Western Gateway Urban Heritage State Park Urban Renewal Plan for the areas shown in red in the image on this slide. The plan envisioned the area becoming a retail destination that would attract 300,000 annual visitors and provided a 30-year time frame a 40-year time frame in which to achieve that vision. Accordingly, the plan expires in September 2021. Turning to slide 20. In 2016, the BSC Group performed an assessment of the urban renewal plan and URP area. That assessment found that the underlying conditions that made the area eligible in 1981 remain present. Those underlying conditions are limited connectivity and access, man-made barriers such as flood chutes, the railroad, and the Hadley overpass, poor visibility from public ways, and underutilized economically obsolete buildings that are in poor condition. An approved urban renewal plan would leverage certain public initiatives, including extension and connection of regional shared use trails, enhanced connectivity to the downtown and Mass MoCA, and preservation and revitalization of the Freight Yard Historic District. Moving to slide 21. Based on the aforementioned findings, the BSC Group recommended extending the plan through 2025. Now bear in mind that this is based on an assessment conducted in 2016. And B, expanding the boundaries to encompass parcels already owned by the redevelopment authority at the northern and southern ends of the URP area, as shown by the blue boundary lines on the image on this slide. It should be noted that the existing boundary bisects parcel number 151059 at the southern end of the URP area as shown on that image, thereby creating a split lot, as the URP area also constitutes the UR2 zoning district. Turning to slide 22, based on a recent review of the BSC Group's assessment, its findings, and recommendations, the Office of Community Development, after consultation with other municipal departments and the mayor, recommends amending the plan to A, extend the duration of the plan through 2031. And it should be noted here that the city's comprehensive plan, the Vision 2030 plan, is also runs through the year 2030. And so aligning the urban renewal plan with the comprehensive plan, it creates a certain amount of alignment that is very sensible and reasonable. And B, expand the boundaries to incorporate the aforementioned parcels. This scenario serves to preserve the tools provided by Chapter 121B for the next decade. It ensures adequate time for the city and the redevelopment authority to to redevelop Heritage State Park and other public properties in the URP area. And it extends the benefits of urban renewal to other properties owned by the redevelopment authority that are currently situated outside of the URP area. I'd like to note that such an amendment as described constitutes a major plan change. And a major plan change requires a specific and laborious process. So moving to slide 23, that process requires the creation of a plan amendment that addresses eligibility, objectives, acquisitions, relocation, disposition, redeveloper's obligation, timeframe, financial plan, citizen participation, and municipal approvals, as previously mentioned earlier in this presentation. The required municipal approvals, also as previously stated, include the redevelopment authority, the planning board determination that the plan is consistent with the city's comprehensive plan, and a city council vote. Turning to slide 24, it is the city's belief that amending the URP as described here tonight is an important and necessary task that will provide benefits to the community and further ensure the future preservation and revitalization of the Freight Yard Historic District. As you can likely tell, however, amending an urban renewal plan for major changes is a not insignificant amount of work and staff time. As such, before taking on such an endeavor, the Office of the Mayor and the Office of Community Development would like input from the City Council on this. As such, next steps are to gauge the Council's sentiment towards the amendment to the URP. If the Council indicates a positive recommendation, the Office of Community Development will begin drafting the URP, which would be as collaborative a process as can be achieved at this time. And with the goal of finalizing the URP amendment by February of 2021, so as to begin the public process by March 2021. And with that, again, I'd like to turn it over to Council President Hopkins for any discussion.
Thank you very much. Good information. Questions from the councilors? Councilor Harpin. Go ahead, Councilor Harpin.
Okay, sorry, it just took me a minute to unmute there. Okay, thanks again, Zach, for all your work that you put into this. I know you've got a lot of time and effort into it, and I just really appreciate your efforts. You do great work. One of the questions I have, or one issue that you brought up, was that the Urban Renewal District and the Redevelopment Authority, the processes in the past were misused. That's what you had said originally in the beginning. Can you please tell me how they were misused in North Adams?
Well, I guess what I'd like to first off thank you for the kind words, and second, urban renewal was used throughout New York and New England and other places across the country in the middle of the 20th century as a way to clear neighborhoods. And am I muted?
No.
No.
Okay. You can't hear me? Can people hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Barely.
Okay, I'm sorry. So I guess to go back to the beginning of that, urban renewal was used throughout the country, really, during the middle of the 20th century as a means of tearing down and just whole-scale demolition of neighborhoods for redevelopment and reconstruction. It it was forced relocation for a lot of people. But speaking more specifically to North Adams, throughout my time here in the city, going back to when I was a student at MCLA, studying political science and history and interning at City Hall, one of the things that we've heard over and over again is how urban renewal was used as just described on Main Street and north of Main Street to the where the Sprague Research Center is. And so the point of that was of making that statement was really to clarify that the intent here is not to acquire buildings through eminent domain, not to demolish anything. It's really more of clerical work in making the redevelopment of Heritage State Park more viable. Sorry for being so long-winded.
That's fine. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I guess I'm waiting for our president to come back on board here.
Oh, did
Yeah, I'm, can you hear me on the phone now?
yes.
Yes.
Okay, sorry about that. My Zoom connection failed, so I'm on the phone now. Zach, did you finish answering the question from Councilor Harpen? And are we moving on to anyone else?
Yes, we can move on.
Okay. While I'm getting reconnected on Zoom here, anyone else have questions?
This is Lisa.
Go ahead.
I also want to thank Zach for the work he's done on this and the Office of OCD or the Community Development Office and the work they've done. And I'm wholeheartedly support this and think we need to move forward.
Thank you.
Thank you. Other councilors wish to ring in.
Just real quickly, I'll echo again. Thank you, Zach. Thank you to Mike as well and others in the office, because I know that this has been a team effort. I would also say that this is something where it isn't super common that an office brings multiple initiatives and efforts forward to the council in such a regimented order, or directly to committee for that matter, to begin these conversations proactively. And I think all of these pieces really start to stack a number of credentials and a number of opportunities for us to act strategically. And as you mentioned, aligning with the 2030 plan and aligning with other overlay districts and our opportunity zones and all of these pieces that really do start to come together and create a portfolio of development opportunity and redevelopment opportunity in a healthy fashion going forward. So I appreciate the work you're doing and continue to do, with this and other efforts going forward, and definitely am in support myself.
Thank you, Councilor Lamb.
Terrific, thank you.
Have some further questions if I can go ahead, if nobody else has any.
Yes, please. I'm trying to get reconnected to the video still here. The city clerk is assisting. Go ahead, Councilor Harpen.
Okay. I really like to try to keep a positive attitude towards things that are happening in the city, and especially to the wonderful development that's happened, over the last 5 years or so. I certainly welcome the people and appreciate all the work and efforts and time and money that they have provided to the city. It's really just outstanding. So that's really not my point, but I really just don't want to sugarcoat an area that I just think needs to be addressed. And as far as being someone that grew up in the neighborhood of Heritage Park and watching it demise is really heartbreaking. So in the issues that have happened along the way are pretty disappointing. So there were a lot of issues. I'm not going to get into the grim details of them all, but there were issues with the Ethics Commission that were the Redevelopment Authority and Heritage Park were brought up in that issue. There were lawsuits. in that area. There were people that were asked to leave, the Heritage State Park that were there for years, and asked to leave for new development, and the new development never came. So these are the things that I see as someone that lives in the city over a short period of time, probably in the last 10 years. So it's just, it was disappointing. It's very heartbreaking to see Heritage Park where it is today. So I guess, my question is, that was just a comment. But my question ultimately is, how did Heritage Park Urban Renewal Zone, how did it get set up? And when did it get set up? Because I know it's separate from the original redevelopment zone. So if you could please explain that.
Yeah, so the city has actually had since the Commonwealth adopted Chapter 121B, the city of North Adams has had 3 separate urban renewal areas. The actually in North Adams was, if my memory is correct, the first municipality to adopt an urban renewal plan, which was for the area where the Sprague Research Center is. The second urban renewal area was the Main Street urban renewal area, which is where Steeple City Plaza is currently located. That also includes some properties along Ashland Street. The Main Street urban renewal area was established, I believe, in 1967. The Western Gateway Urban Heritage State Park urban renewal area was established in 1981. So it is possible and perfectly fine for a municipality to have multiple urban renewal areas. I believe Boston has 16. Does that answer your question, Councilor Harpen?
Yeah, so I just want to make sure. So it's 2 separate urban renewal areas, right? One is downtown and the other one is Heritage Park.
So the Main Street urban renewal area, which was established in 1967, the plan for that area expired in 2007 and was not renewed via an amendment. I guess you could say its ghost lived on in the city's zoning as the UR1 district. But when the council in October of 2019, when the council adopted the city's new zoning map, the UR1 was incorporated into a larger central business district. So the Main Street urban renewal area no longer exists.
So the plaza is no longer under urban renewal?
No, it's part of the central business district and subject to the planning board.
So the area that is the south side of Main Street over to American Legion Drive, Oasis Plaza, Ashland Street, was an urban renewal district prior to last year. It is no longer. That just doesn't exist. And so any activity in there that requires approval by a board goes before the planning board instead now.
Correct.
So the only one that we have available now is the Heritage Park one.
Yes, that is correct.
Other questions from councilors? Mayor, did you want to add anything on this?
Councilor Bona has his hand up.
I'm sorry, Councilor Bona?
Sorry, Chairman, are you not able to see us yet?
I can. I had to hijack
okay.
the city clerk's laptop.
Right, that's fine. What are we looking to do with this tonight? Is there a motion on the floor?
Not yet, Councilor Lamb. I was going to ask you to do that soon.
Yeah, so I'm going to do a similar, unless there's any other questions now, the motion would be a motion to recommend the Office of Community Development continue to pursue action on the urban renewal district work.
Which again does not commit us to extending the life of the plan. And I'll say again, I think I asked this question at the committee meeting. even if we extend the life of the plan for 10 years, if, at some point in the future, we decide it's no longer needed, we can end its existence. Is that correct, Zach?
Yes. Yeah, and I guess I would just like to add that the whole purpose of bringing this to the city council is to engage the council in this work, but also to gauge the council's whether or not the council would be supportive of this work. It will require an extensive amount of effort and staff time to draft an urban renewal plan. It will take up a not insubstantial amount of board, council, and other commissions' time as it winds its way through the public process. And with that in mind, the Office of Community Development, while we fully support this and believe that it's really necessary to ensure the redevelopment of Heritage State Park and reinvestment in that area, we don't want to consume all of that time and all of those staff hours with work that when it's brought to council after a long period, there's no support there for it. So that's why we're here tonight delivering this presentation.
All right, thank you. Councilor Moulton.
Yes, if we did not vote to continue carrying on with the urban renewal project there, what would happen to it, and would it turn over to the city or to the state? Because the state was the original, wheel that got this thing going.
So if we were to not pursue an amendment to the urban renewal plan to extend it, what would happen is that in September of 2021, the plan would expire. With that, we would lose all of the various benefits that I mentioned earlier in the presentation. The city's ability to sort of stimulate investment in redevelopment of Heritage State Park would certainly be reduced. However, there's property in the urban renewal project urban renewal plan area that is owned by the city, that is owned by the redevelopment authority, and that is also owned by private residents. So the land ownership of the land would not change hands with the expiration of an urban renewal plan. And from there, once the plan expires, we would then have to some zoning work to do, creating a new zoning district to replace the UR1 or moving that into the CBD or some other zoning district.
Thank you. Other questions from councilors? Councilor Moulton, follow up, and then Councilor Harpen.
So if it did go, we had to rezone it, and it came back, would that be something we could put an RFP out for it and have the private sector come in and get involved in this?
Well, we could put out an RFP for the property anytime. We can go that route regardless of the existence of an urban renewal plan. The zoning, the urban renewal plan doesn't affect ownership of the property unless we use that plan to acquire or dispose of property.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Councilor Harpen.
Okay, I just want to let you know that I'm not totally against this, but I am gonna vote against this tonight because one, you said that you need to complete it by 2021, which is I think you said February by 2021. You wanted it to be on board, which really gives us a short time frame, or gives you a really short time frame considering where we are in the world today and what is happening, and on unknowingly knowing what our future beholds, and how quickly we can act on some of these things and getting the public involved. I'm always concerned about making sure that the public is aware of what's happening, having the appropriate meetings, and having some kind of media, at least posting things so people know what's going on. It's one thing to have a public meeting. It's one thing to get the whole entire city involved in this. And it's something that affects the entire city. So it's something that's very important. I find this to be a very, very important piece of property in the city of North Adams. And it's vital. It is very vital. You're absolutely right. So to say, to have a commitment to get this completed by February of 2021, I just think it's unreasonable. My other issue is, seeing how there were some issues in the past 10 years with Heritage State Park. And nothing against the people. I'm not saying that they were involved in anything that were on the redevelopment authority in the past, but they've been on there for quite some time. And I would just like to see some fresh faces on there. If we're going to start something new and we're going to create some new energy in the city and we're going to start some fresh ideas, then maybe we ought to get some fresh people on board. So those are my opinions. You can take them for what they are. But that's how I feel.
Thank you. Councilor Lamb, Councilor Bona, a question.
Yeah, well, again, more of a comment, and I'm somewhat in agreement with Councilor Harpen. I don't think I've been shy in the past of saying I've not been a fan of the redevelopment authority, having authority over certain parts of the city. And while that has shrunk in the south side of Main Street and that area is not under their authority anymore, where I have issues is we're focusing on a specific area that we're going to then say we're going to try to get more incentives and more grants and things like that over in a particular area. I feel we're a small city. I feel we have a small downtown, and I have issues where one section of our economical base may get privileges while the rest of the downtown does not, and then that's where the focus is. The other thing is, and I don't know where, the future of this is going with the railroad, the Model Railroad Museum and everything, but that is still something that's on the table. And it feels like this is all to benefit one entity if that still goes through, that someone will purchase the Heritage Park, someone will purchase the Sons of Italy property, will develop all that. And I think our plan and hope is that one going to be one developer, and then we're creating these incentives and this extra benefit for anybody who particularly goes in that area. So it's sort of twofold for me. I've never been a real fan of the, again, redevelopment authority having different rules than the rest of the city and downtown. And secondly, it just feels like at this point, we'll be giving incentives to maybe one entity. Again, I don't know what's on the table at this point if the whole Model Railroad Museum concept is done or not. But those are just my feelings.
Okay, Councilor.
I gotta run. I gotta grab a charger, so I'm just going to disappear for a minute.
Okay, Councilor Moulton, did you have your hand up?
No, I'm good.
All right, thank you, Councilor Lamb.
Yeah, I just wanted to note that this is a tool that we can very easily lose within a year and a few months, or a tool that we can hold on to. This is not, I think it's important to recognize that this isn't something where we can just create new overlay districts that are urban renewal zones in other parts of the city. So it takes a lot of effort to create these, and it's very easy to lose them by just stopping the work on something with some pretty significant, not just incentives, but regardless of if the current proposed plans for that space are what come to fruition on that particular lot. When you look at developments in other small communities, they stack as many of these potential credentials and tools in their toolbox as possible to make those properties as lucrative for development, private, public, or otherwise, as possible. And so I think that from a development perspective, whether it's a local community organization that ends up in there and does some really great stuff, or if it's a museum that goes in there, or if it's a retail operation, whatever the case, or the potential opportunities that exist there are, it's I feel like it's a disservice to let it just fail and fall apart rather than giving it the legwork now that gives us a 10-month or potentially a 10-year additional runway to urge the development of that property into what it could be, to bring it back to life, for lack of a better phrase. Because I think that, it has had a robust history, and it has had the opportunity for other opportunities that have not come to fruition to much of an extent. But that property, if given the right kind of nourishment in terms of incentives and creating opportunities for development, may see that development down the road. We don't know what the future is going to hold. Absolutely. There's a lot of unknowns there. But the reality is we'll never be able to see any of that happen if we just let these tools fall to the wayside. So I'm strongly in support of this from a development perspective.
Thank you, Councilor Lamb. I'll just go on the record as saying I echo Councilor Lamb's sentiments on this, and we'll be voting to proceed with it. Councilor Wilkinson.
Yes, you stole my words. I want to also say I agree with Councilor Lamb that I'm full support of this. That Heritage State Park has always been kind of a special place for me. I've always wanted to see something really happen nice there, and for one reason or another, it hasn't. But we can't just let it sit and rot, because it's not too far from rot now.
Any further comment before we put a motion on the table? Councilor Sweeney. I'm sorry, you'll have to unmute.
Yep, sorry. I just also wanted to echo that I am also in support of this. I see Heritage State Park as actually like a strong connector to downtown, and from a walking perspective. We've done a lot of really great work in the city with the skate park and the wash park, and I think making it that whole corridor in between more pedestrian friendly and just active could be really beneficial to those other resources that we've built in that neighborhood. So I'm in support.
Thank you very much. Any further comment before we get a motion on the table? Councilor Bona and then Moulton.
Sort of to off of what Councilor Wilkinson was saying, let's just keep in mind most of the Heritage Park has been under the redevelopment authority anyway, and to say that it will be sitting and rotting, it's been, other than we put some new pavement down and landscaping, it hasn't moved much in 30 years, and it has been under the redevelopment authority. So to say that we're going to add some more property and that's going to change things, I guess I'd say I'm pessimistic. But so that's just my comment there.
Thank you, Councilor Moulton.
Yes, I kind of agree with Councilor Bona. It's been almost 40 years. We've had it in the redevelopment authority, and there's been lots of proposals, and I've been involved and was in some of those buildings at some point. I didn't see anything happening. I think they've had more than a fair opportunity to do something, and I'd love to see something happen down there. It could be a great linkage point between Mocha and downtown. I don't see it. I think they've had their opportunity, so I'm probably going to vote against this.
Let my audio catch up here.
Sorry, did you say my name?
Okay. Councilor Lamb, I'm getting the internet connection on.
I heard my name, so I'm going to go. So I just wanted to, I just wanted to respond a bit here. I think there's layers to this that might be helpful for us to also consider as siloed out. So there's the authority itself, right? So there's the body, and we can have and may have and do have concerns about the development authority, that body that is the management body of the facility. That is absolutely something of concern that should and can be addressed. But then there's the utility of having a designation as it stands, and so those are two separate but connected pieces here. And I worry that in order to remove an authority body that individuals or groups may consider being ineffective for X number of years, is taking that and turning that into removing this entire overlay utility that we have is long-term counterproductive, because even if the body fully changes over in terms of who the representation is on that body, if you wait for this to expire, you can't just add a new body onto it that can manage this better. It is either it's the identity of the footprint or it's not. So there are two things here, and I think that, you know, just saying no to any progress or any forward motion on this because you don't like who's managing it or you don't like what they've done is unfortunately putting a lot at risk in terms of what the designation on that property gives us in terms of, you know, incentivizing development down the road, grants opportunities of that type, things that make it more attractive for grant opportunities in the future if we do need to keep buildings, you know, shorn up or, you know, putting roofs on them or whatever the case might be. It's just, I think it's important that we separate those two things out, even though we recognize that they are part of the same larger pot of management.
I know Paul's gone again. President's gone again. I just want to say that I agree with what Councilor Lamb has said. And I do think just because we can vote for it and move forward with things, if there's things that need to be tweaked, then we tweak them. I don't think we throw away an opportunity that will be gone in some of the advantages that come with it. And I think that Councilor Lamb articulated it particularly well. Thank you.
Okay, hi, everybody. This is Paul Hopkins. Can anybody hear me? I'm on Zach's laptop now.
Yes.
I'll just say for the record, next time we're doing this differently, one way or another. I apologize for the confusion. Did we have any resolution? Do we have a motion on the table yet? Did people get their questions answered?
I'll make the motion just to put it out there and we can keep having questions. So a motion to recommend continuation of the work through the Office of Community Development.
Do we have a second? We have a second from Councilor Blackmer. Any last discussion? Hearing none, I'm going to make this a roll call vote. Counselor, the city clerk's going to call out the name. I will repeat it for you if you need to hear it. And if you would signify with an aye with a hand raise, and we'll record the vote.
Councilor Blackmer?
Blackmer?
Yes.
Aye. Counselor Bona?
No.
Harpin?
No.
Lamb?
Lamb?
Yes.
Moulton?
Moulton?
No.
Sweeney?
Sweeney?
Yes.
Wilkinson?
Wilkinson?
Yes.
Hopkins?
Hopkins, yes. And that is a 5-3 vote, and the motion passes. Thank you all very much. We have a couple of licenses ahead of us to do as the last part of our agenda. Application for a license for Empire Antiques, license type secondhand, business location 432 State Road. The applicant's name, James Montepere, 100 McLean Court, Williamstown. And we need a motion to approve the license.
Move to approve.
Second.
We have a motion from Councilor Wilkinson, and who made the second?
Lisa. Councilor Blackmer.
Councilor Blackmer. Any discussion?
I will be abstaining.
One abstention from Councilor Bona. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye and raising your hand.
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And one abstention. Thank you. Application for a license also from James Montepere, 100 McLean Court, Williamstown for Empire Antiques, a business location 63 Main Street. Motion to approve.
Motion to approve.
We have a motion from Councilor Lamb, second from Councilor Wilkinson. I'll give that to you. Discussion. Hearing none. All those in favor, same deal.
Aye.
Aye.
I will abstain.
One abstention. Any opposed? And one abstention from Counselor Bona. Thank you very much. Lastly, application for a license for a secondhand operation, Mary Antiques and Gifts, 615 Ashland Street, North Adams. Applicant Mary Ann George of 656 Ashland Street. Motion to approve.
So moved.
So moved.
We have a motion from Counselor Harpen, second from Counselor Blackmer. Discussion. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, it's unanimous. Moving on our agenda, Mayor's concerns. Mayor, did you have anything to add tonight?
No, again, I just want to thank everyone for the opportunity to provide an update and for the discussion about the urban renewal in particular. Again, Zach and the team in community development have done and will continue to do really incredible work in thinking about how we advance community and economic development in the city responsively to the concerns that were surfaced in this discussion. So thank you all very much.
All right, thank you. Anything else? No. Liaison updates and counselor concerns, please signify either by raising your hand or, because I can't see everybody, calling out your name. No counselors' concerns? Going once, going twice. All right, thank you. There is no correspondence before us tonight, therefore a motion to adjourn is in order.
So moved.
Motion from Counselor Blackmer, second from Counselor Harpen. Is that correct?
Yes.
Close enough. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you very much, everybody. We will reconvene in 2 weeks and we will either figure out the Zoom issues or we'll do it a different way. Thank you very much. We're adjourned.
They will.